Welcome to the last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 podcasts, brought to you by Dietzo Man Productions.
I've done that a time or two and made for a real stressful day.
I bet. Yeah.
So, where are you coming to us from? California Lutheran University. I didn't have a chance to look that up.
Yeah, I'm actually at home today. I live nearby in Camarillo. California Lutheran University is in Thousand Oaks, California, and it is equidistant from Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. So I'm about an hour out of LA and about an hour out of Santa Barbara and 25 minutes from the ocean.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
This interview has been like 6 months in the making. I think it's the longest wait I've had for an interview, but I'm glad we finally got the chance to have a chat.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just so busy during the semester and had a couple of professional trips in March, and so it delayed my ability to connect with you. But yeah, I'm just glad to be part of your project, and what a cool project it is.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. And I think a lot of others have as well. So you're the associate professor of English.
Correct.
At
yes.
the California Lutheran University. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my notes. I'm not being disrespectful.
Oh, sure.
And if you see me looking down, I'm either writing notes or reading my notes and trying to stay one step ahead of the conversation, which doesn't always work. So you'll have to forgive me for that.
Totally fine.
So what's that like?
Yeah, well, I like my position really well. You know, I'm a tenured professor. The rank really makes no difference as long as you get tenure. And someday I may go up for full professor, but an associate professor is a full professor in the sense that it's a full-time job and you're working every bit as hard as somebody who is professor. And so are the assistant professors. And so it's a good job at a small place, a small university. We have approximately 4,000 students. The advantage of being at a small private institution like Cal Lutheran is that we can make a greater number of choices for what we want to do in our research and scholarship. We don't have to, there isn't quite the publish or perish imperative that there would be at, say, a University of Kansas or a University of Oklahoma. But we do publish. And in recent years, I've just taken great delight in doing an interdisciplinary project that connects my strong interest in literature with my passion for music. And so, when we were trying to get together, Scott, in March, I made 2 trips, professional trips, for my scholarly project on composer Morten Lauridsen.
Yeah, I noticed Morten figured prominently in your bio. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you this story quickly. A number of years ago, this was in 2014, I was directing our first year seminar program, which is a program that all entering freshmen, first year students take when they come to the university. It's sort of an introduction to college kind of course. And as part of that course, we always, in the past, had chosen a book, and then we'd have discussions about the book. If the author was alive, we'd try to bring the author to campus and so forth. And so in spring of 2014, as director of the program, I started getting frustrated because it seemed to me that these freshman seminar programs, I'm sure OU has such a program, Oklahoma State probably does too, virtually every place does. It seemed that every place was making predictable choices. And I even got catalogs from publishers. Here are our freshman year reads for next year, and I'm thinking, there's something wrong with this. We're all doing the predictable things. And I was watching a favorite DVD of mine at home one Sunday afternoon, and it was on composer Morten Lauridsen. And of course, I love music. I love classical music especially, but he kind of transcends categories because he's very popular too. He's primarily a choral composer, and he has a lot of art songs, but jazz is infused into his music. Gospel blues is in there sometimes, the American musical. You can hear all these strains in there, but it's in this very elegant form. And so there I was in my living room with these silly publishers' catalogs around me thinking, what are we going to do for the common reading for the freshmen in the fall? And it suddenly formed in my mind. Our common reading next year is the music of composer Morten Lauridsen. Right. So a couple years after that, and I'd given up the directorship, I realized how much I missed writing about music because I'd written this extensive set of teaching notes for the 30 faculty teaching in the program. And I thought, wow, let's try to do a project. Let's ask them, and I pitched an idea. And oh my gosh, he said yes. And that led to my first article. I've got a second one done, and I'm in the process of writing a book. In fact, Scott, after we get off this, I will send you that first published article in PDF.
I was going to ask you to send me the links.
Yeah. And a link to the music, because I think, given your involvement over the years with Bartlesville Symphony, you'll appreciate just hearing a little bit of the music. So I'll send you a couple of clips. I'll send you his signature piece, and I'll send you a very, just a beautiful piece called Sure on This Shining Night. You'll love them.
Yeah, I before this interview, so I looked up Sure on This Shining Night and listened to it. And
cool.
That was it was really good. Yeah. I mean, not good's not the right word for it, but it was haunting maybe. And then another one was Ubi Caritas.
Yeah.
Caritas.
Ubi Caritas. Yeah, it's the Latin. Yes. Yes. Let us love one another. Yeah. From the Latin. Yeah, man. When I heard that at the University of Southern California in 2016, and I had heard it before in recording, but boy, you get to a certain point in that piece and the full chorus comes in after the men open it, and I had tears just running down my face. It was so beautiful. Right? Yeah,
it was really good. I really enjoyed that one too. And that I'm not a big choral person, but I do remember, because I like movies and I like John Williams. I remember John Williams adding choral pieces to Empire of the Sun. And then he started doing adding choral or chants or something to the first 3 Star Wars movies. So those were, really, really, I really enjoyed those. So. Well, the other thing I want to ask you was, Jim Bond has considerable expertise in the areas of writing theory and pedagogy. So writing theory and pedagogy is versus teaching, where you try to get someone to be curious. Pedagogy is I'm not going to get this right, the practice of teaching, or help me out with that.
Very, very good question, Scott. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, pedagogy or pedagogy, depending on how you want to pronounce it, has to do with your philosophy of teaching, and it's the theory and practice of teaching together. And yeah, so one of the reasons why I was hired at Cal Lutheran, and I had previously taught at Valparaiso University in Indiana, was my background as a high school English teacher. I only did it for a year. But then during grad school, I did a number of things around the state of Indiana where I would observe high school teachers write up reports of their teaching, because some of those high schools were offering versions of Indiana University's freshman composition program to seniors. And so this became an area of expertise. My PhD is in English, but it's in an interdisciplinary program called Language, Literature, and Literacy Studies. And so that last one, Literacy Studies, how we learn to read and write, that's connected to writing pedagogy. And so that became one of my key things. So once a year, I teach a course for future teachers, many of them who will become elementary school teachers, called The Teaching of Writing. And then another course I've done in recent years that's just great is the Senior English Major Capstone course. And that's a lot of fun too, because I can talk with them in a more philosophical way about how we create as writers and what is our writing process and what's involved in that. And I bring some of my own writing in both of those classes into the classroom, show them drafts of things, and talk them through some of the choices I make as a writer when I'm trying to create something new. And I'm sure you do this as well in your work, Scott, especially your work in communications, with your study of communications at Oklahoma State and everything, your subsequent career.
So when you teach writing, you're not teaching someone how to write. What you're doing is teaching them how to teach writing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Now for the senior capstone English majors, the ones taking that course, most of them are not planning to become teachers. So in that course, we actually apply the whole discussion to ourselves. But even with the future teachers, I want them to become writers too. Because if we're going to teach something in the classroom, no matter what level, we need to be doing it as teachers. Otherwise, we're faking it.
Yeah. So how do you become a writer? I mean, I have an interest in writing. As I get older, I find myself, I was a journalism major, but, really haven't applied writing so much, but as I get older, it seems to me to be it's more important to write. The handwritten thank you note is no longer around hardly anymore. So how do you become a writer? I mean, anybody can write, right? I mean,
well,
anybody can write, but
absolutely. Well, you really work on engaging in writing as a process, and you're not thinking so much about, well, what's my end product? You put the end product thing to one side and you do multiple drafts of things. For my project on composer Morten Lauridsen, for example, I keep I'll show it to you here. I keep a journal. It can barely show it there, but I keep a journal because I've found that I become a better writer when I capture ideas that come to me on the fly. So if I'm driving somewhere and an idea pops in my head, but I'm quote unquote not writing at the time, I'm grabbing that that toss away envelope that's on the seat, or the ATM receipt, or whatever,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and jotting down my idea. Later, I put it in my journal, or I go to the screen and I put it right into my draft if it's good. The article I'll send you, Scott, part of it I wrote in the ER. I had bumped my head on a kitchen cabinet really hard one morning. I'd left the kitchen cabinet open,
Oh yeah,
feeding the cats, and blood was coming out. And I was so determined that morning to write. And I thought, oh my gosh, now I got to go to the ER.
Yeah.
So I took these art books with me, because you'll see in the article, I'm not just talking about music, I'm also talking about art. And there I was waiting for treatment in the ER. And I wrote a couple of really good sentences. Those ended up going into my draft. Now I finessed them.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I used to only write when I was quote unquote writing. And so the number one thing I try to engage my own students in doing is write at all times. When you're out taking a run, that idea that comes to you, capture it. If it means putting it on your phone, put it on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a process where you write at certain times of, like there's different authors that block off, 5 to 10 a.m., every day religiously. I think John Grisham does that. There's this other lady, I can't remember her name right now. She wrote Handmaid's Tale or something.
Sure, Margaret Atwood.
Atwood. And then I can't remember. Anyway, I mean, even on holidays, I mean, they just don't miss it. Do you recommend that approach, or you just write all the time?
Well, I do recommend that approach with a caveat. The two writers you mentioned are professional writers, and they're doing it full time. I have to earn a living. So I have to teach students. I serve on committees. I do service. I'm a busy guy. So only at certain times of the year do I have huge blocks of time. So what I tell my own students is, as much as possible, make it a daily practice, even if it means only 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. And so even getting those 10 minutes in, you can get a lot done. And then when you've got open slots at time, wow, so I'm moving into summer now. I have more open slots at time. And so I will begin scheduling some open times to write, primarily in the mornings. Yeah.
Hey, hang on just a second.
Sure.
I have this Austin Cleon. He has a newsletter. He's out of San Antonio. Anyway, he has this got this idea from Jerry Seinfeld, and I've shown this before on the show, where you just take whatever you do, practice more, suck less, whatever. But
I like that.
Yeah, just don't break the chain. When you start, I guess Jerry Seinfeld does this with his jokes. I guess he's been writing jokes every day for 30 years or whatever. Right. The key here is, if you want to establish a habit, just check off the day and don't break the chain. Just, keep the X's going. And
yeah, to a point, while also recognizing that we're human and there are going to be times when we've got to just get away from it.
Oh, yeah. That's probably a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was kind of nervous about this intro because it's very, you're a little out of my league.
Oh, no, not at all, Scott.
I was like,
you're asking good questions. Yeah.
So you'll send me the link to the articles there. That's great.
Yeah.
Writing. Do you talk to Amy Wallen any? She's a writer. I read her book. We were ghosts or something like that. You guys should get together, sounds like.
Yeah, if assuming we both make it to the reunion, hopefully we can connect.
Right.
We keep in touch a little bit over Facebook. So yeah,
Mhm.
we've had some good exchanges on Facebook. I
Good.
think she's really a neat person,
Yes,
and
she is.
um, look forward to hopefully reconnecting with her at the reunion. Yeah,
So let's dial it back here a little bit.
sure.
Let's get our comfy shoes on and um, talk about. Let's go back to Bartlesville. I remember you in probably Central and College High. You were in the orchestra, violin,
Right,
I think it
right,
was.
right. Yeah.
And there's a picture of you on page 21 or 22 standing there with I think Carla Shepard's in there, Buddy Snodgrass, some other folks. Um, that's about all. Was Denise Washer in that picture too? I'm not sure. Anyway.
I think she was in band, or
Oh
wasn't she
yeah.
a twirler maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're
But
right.
I
Yeah.
do know Denise, remember her from some of our combined band and orchestra trips, and you were in the band yourself, weren't you?
You're right. Trumpet for a while. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good instrument. Yeah.
So did you grow up in Bartlesville? Were you born there, or how did you?
No. Interesting, Scott. Good question. Yeah, no, I'm a California native,
Oh
and
wow.
so I was born out of the Bay Area, about a half hour or so from San Francisco in Concord.
Hmm.
And then right before I turned 11, my dad, who worked for Phillips, the government, as part of an antitrust suit, Phillips had bought Getty Oil on the West Coast, and the government forced Phillips to sell its entire West Coast operations. And
Oh
so
wow.
the choice for my dad, unless he wanted to get a new job, was to either take a job in the headquarters town of Bartlesville or go to Borger, Texas. And he visited Borger, and he didn't like it at all. He thought Bartlesville would be a viable place.
Probably a
But
smart choice.
yeah, no, it was. And it was a challenging transition for me, I have to say. And it was formative in that way.
What was the big deal there? What was the big
There
deal?
were a lot of different things, Scott. I mean, so one thing has to do with just the smaller locale of Bartlesville. And, I came from a large suburban area, half hour out of San Francisco. So that took some transition. Yeah. Another thing were some of the distinctive religious differences between one region and the other. In Concord, we were church-going folk. We were one of the few ones in our neighborhood that went to church every single Sunday. We were Lutheran. But when we moved to Bartlesville, it seemed that most of the people, about a third of them, we actually looked this up at the time, were either Southern Baptist or Wesleyan. And suddenly our faith was called into question by some of the Southern Baptist and Wesleyan folks. And, this, man. And this is a cool memory. I don't want to cast aspersions at anyone, but it was kind of a tough thing for me at the time. And I won't name the folks. They became friends of mine later. But 5th grade, Wayside Elementary, there were 3 little boys on the playground with me, first day of school or second day, something like that. And one of them said to me, and he was deadly serious, it was not a joke, "Well, I guess we'll let you play with us, even though you're not Baptist." And and again, the one that said that to me became a good friend overall. And but that never left me. And it was so weird, Scott, because in Concord, we were outliers as being these faithful church-going folk, and so it boggled my 11-year-old mind. How was it possible that suddenly I'm not good enough, right? So this became a perennial question for me throughout my life.
Huh.
What does it mean to be open to different religious perspectives, including people who are Southern Baptists and Wesleyan? And Scott, one of my fond memories of you is when we were at University of Kansas. I don't know if you remember this, but
Go ahead.
you and Don Hyken and I, occasionally on Sundays, we would go to different churches and try them out. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was kind of fun.
Wow.
I think we only did it 3 or 4 times, but it was
Mhm.
fun,
Yeah.
and then we'd talk about what we were comfortable with and why. And
Hadn't
I
thought about
thought
that
that
in
was
so long.
really interesting because I'm trying to remember. I think you were Southern Baptist, weren't you? Probably
Mhm.
still are.
Not really. I mean,
Not really. Broadened
just
a little bit.
yeah, just non-denominational more really.
Yeah, and I
But,
respect that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So my brother's Catholic. We're I guess you say non-denominational. We were Baptist. Well, heck, at one time we were Methodist, and so
Makes sense.
I mean, nobody's got a corner on anything. You just go with what you know or what you're comfortable with. So yeah, whatever. Just as long as you are comfortable with it and it fits you and it's good for you, well then yeah, I'm not the judge. I'm
Totally.
that's it's good. I'm good with it. Sounds like you are too. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
When you think back on College High,
Hmm.
1982, what are some of the memories? What are some of the first things that pop to your mind when you think back on the senior year?
Yeah. Well, I think back over those 3 years, really, rather than just the senior year. But and I pulled out my yearbooks last night and kind of browsed through them a little bit. Yeah, it was fun to do.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the dedication of the teachers was just incredible. And so there were several ones that really spoke to me in various ways. And I know that one we probably share, Scott, Dan Simmons,
Oh yeah.
being in his class. And I remember one time he modeled for us how to write a paragraph, and he wrote it in front of us on the chalkboard. And then I remember another class, and he had that paragraph up, and he then pulled, they had these boards you could pull down over things.
Yeah.
And he pulled a board over and he said, now it's your turn. I want you to write a paragraph on this piece of literature, and I want you to try the process I've put before you, And I've often thought about that. Sometimes I do something similar to this day with my own students. So he was influential. Deborah Kahn taught me in my sophomore year, taught an English class.
Okay.
And she wrote the nicest thing in my yearbook and just, really encouraged me. She had us writing essays every week. Coach Bruno.
Oh, yeah, Bruno.
Coach Bruno, and I was not an athlete, but I was in his phys ed class at one point. And
yeah,
I just remember what a kind man he was. And though I wasn't the star athlete, he always treated me well. And he wrote such kind words in my yearbook. He said something like, life will go easy for you because you're serious about things. Well, I don't know about easy, but still, what a nice thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Robert Touchstone taught speech.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He really, in a lot of ways, was better. His class was better than the speech class I had in college.
Wow.
Don French, who taught band and orchestra. And he, by his own admission, he didn't know much about orchestra.
Hmm.
And yet he was pretty humble about it and would ask those of us who were kind of the leaders of the group for advice and run things by us. And he became one of my favorites. I was very skeptical of him at first. And then Miss Colmenares, if I'm saying her name right,
Yeah,
Sharon
Colmenares.
Colmenares. Yeah, she was great. I believe she was the cheerleader coach or pom-pom coach. But math was never easy for me.
No, me either.
And yeah, I figured you were that way too, Scott. And I just thought she had such a way about her that made it possible for me to do math.
I'm looking up Colmenares.
Yeah, I looked her
There
up
we go.
last night. I'd forgotten her first name was Sharon, but
Sharon, yeah, 120.
remember she had red hair, and yeah, she was great. Such a warm, accepting person for those of us who were kind of on the margins of the high math achievers that seemed to dominate part of Col-Hi.
Yeah.
I also liked Mrs. Ogilvy really well, Ellen Ogilvy. But I struggled more in her class. She just had kind of a higher bar in it, which I could never reach. And but she was definitely a good teacher in many ways, maybe just not the ideal one for me. Right.
Yeah.
So that's not a judgment against her. It's just there's maybe a little bit of a mismatch, but she was good, you know.
Speaking of music earlier, when you think back to high school, what music takes you, when you hear it, takes you back to around 82?
Well, Carla Shepard would never forgive me if I didn't mention Eine kleine Nacht music, you know, by Mozart, because we used to, in rehearsals, and sometimes we'd get together preparing for a contest or something, and we'd suddenly break into the opening of Eine kleine Nacht music. And yeah, she's teased me about that a lot over the years. So I think of that piece. I think of Fiddler on the Roof, because we played the suite from that. I'm sure there were other pieces that we played, but those two in particular stand out. And, you know, I stayed in the orchestra under Don French. I quit in my sophomore year.
Oh, did you?
For a day or two. And then I rejoined. I mean, it was kind of an act of rebellion, because I thought, we got this band guy, Don French. He knows nothing about orchestra. You know, all this adolescent angst. But I had just been accepted into the Tulsa Youth Symphony, and they had a rule. In order to be in the Tulsa Youth Symphony, you had to participate in your school music group. And so I rejoined.
Reluctantly.
Ate crow. Yes, I ate crow and rejoined. Yes. And found out Don French was actually a really good guy.
That's cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What car did you drive in high school?
Oh gosh, I had a couple of different cars. I had a I drove my dad's car primarily, which was a Chevrolet Vega, 1974 Chevrolet Vega. And then at a certain point, I got, it was a lemon, but I got a Buick Skyhawk, which I ended up not keeping, but I had it my last year of high school. That poor car, you honk the horn or you use the turn indicator, and sometimes the engine would quit. It had an electrical short in there.
Oh my gosh.
I won't mention the dealer we bought it from, because it might involve a member of our graduating class, but they couldn't fix it and they wouldn't guarantee it. And so by the time I got to Kansas, University of Kansas, in the middle of the freshman year, I had to trade that one out for a little Toyota Tercel. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, who was your gang? Who were the the ones you hung out with? What was your
Couple-
tribe like?
Yeah, a couple different groups. I mean, obviously, I really bonded with the music people, you know. So Carla Shepherd, Carla and I talk every few weeks when
Oh,
when
yeah?
our schedules enable it. Yeah, we talk on the phone, chit chat, catch up, counsel each other. She's a good friend. Jennifer
Tell-
yeah,
Tell her she needs to get on the show.
yeah, I know. She probably does. She probably does. Jennifer McGregor, who was a year younger than us, but she was in orchestra. John Hensley was part of
Yeah.
that crowd. There were some others. I think Connie Doherty was in the orchestra for a while. Many others. And then there was another group of guys, that I hung out with quite a bit. Keith Richards.
Oh, yeah.
James Bond, meet Keith Richards, right? Two famous names, right?
Yeah.
I liked Keith a lot. And we're still in touch over Facebook. Jason Casto was
Yeah.
part of that little group, and Todd Meyerdirk. I'm not as much in touch with any of those guys anymore, but I have some fond memories of them. Yeah.
So Todd's been on the show, Keith.
Right.
Yeah, I saw Todd a couple of months ago. Was it 3 months ago now? He was over for his I think it was his dad's funeral, and so we all went out to lunch at Dink's here in town. There was quite a few of us, actually.
Yeah.
So it was good to see him again, and yeah,
he's a good guy.
Yeah, we definitely need to get Carla Shepherd and Jason and all the others. I mean, there's so many to get on the show here. If you looking back on 40 years, you know, here's the question. You know, you're 18 years old and you go back 40 years and you see yourself, little Jim Bond, walking across the graduation stage. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah. I anticipated this question because I saw that you asked others. It's a good question. You know, what I would tell my younger self is, hey, Jim, do more of what you were doing. And don't be afraid to be a renegade, to be an independent spirit, to do your own thing. You did that really well, younger self. Do it even more and do it fearlessly. Because I had good friends at Col-Hi, but I also spent a lot of time alone. And I'm still that way, reading, listening to my music, practicing. And there's always that pressure. Well, but am I being accepted? How do I fit in? What do I do? Do I need to go to this dance? Do I need to, and so I think for my younger self to just relax about those pressures of conforming to some perceived norm. Because I did worry about those kinds of things. We all do, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But I really was doing the right thing whenever I was doing my own thing. And it really led to a good life, a rich life. And that's what I'll continue doing in my journey.
What's your what would you say is your greatest accomplishment in the last 40 years?
Yeah, what a great question. This book project on Morten Lauridsen, and the 2 articles that I've created, one is forthcoming. It's not out yet, but it's in the pipeline. And finding ways to, in my teaching and in my life work, to connect literature with all the other arts, so that, getting beyond this idea in education that's so detrimental to our development when we think of things in separate little pods. So I think connecting people and helping my students become lifelong learners. So when I teach students in my English classes, yeah, I like having English majors, and I do have English majors, but the bulk of students that I teach are non-majors, and they matter to me every bit as much, if not more, than the English majors, because I want them to develop skills so that when they go out in life, they can listen more critically when they go to a Bartlesville Symphony concert, or when they go see a film, they have a set of tools they can apply to that, or they go to an art museum and they can think actively about why they like a particular work of art or not. And also put on hold, maybe they reject something that they see, but rather than staying with the rejection, putting that rejection on hold to reconsider, well, what is it that I might be missing here in my reactionary vision of this piece? So I think helping people to be more deeply connected to things that nourish the spirit, that's what I'm proud of the most. And I think I've done that in my teaching and in my writing. And that's what I want to continue doing.
Oh, that's cool. And, on the flip side of the coin, the other question is, what's been the biggest challenge, the biggest disappointment over the last 40 years?
Yeah. Wow. That's a great question as well, Scott. I think finding time for myself, finding time, paying attention to my own needs, and finding ways to meet those needs. One of the things that I struggle with right now is time to just be physically active, because, we're both in this situation where we're late middle age. If I don't get out and move, it's going to have consequences. And I'm feeling some of those consequences. And so this summer, I'm really trying to build in some walks. The pandemic is surging again here in California. So it's not
kicking back
bad.
up?
Yeah, a little bit. It's not bad. It's not bad, but I just don't trust that. So I haven't returned to gym workouts yet. I could, but I'd want to wear a mask, and that's just so uncomfortable. But I mean, I think really finding space for time for Jim and to meet Jim's needs, that's been a challenge, because my life has been about putting aside my needs in service of others and in service of the various great projects that I've done over the years.
Yeah. You've got to put the oxygen mask on first before you try to help anybody else.
It's a good metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah. I think a lot of us are who feel that way. I try to stretch. I need to walk more.
Yeah.
I need to drink more water here. I got a glass of water right here.
Yeah.
And I need 3 of these a day, and it's hard to get one of these down a day. Why? I have no idea, but anyway, well, to wind it all up, last words to those Wildcats watching, listening, anything you want to say to everybody?
Yeah. Well, what a great group we were back in the days. And I just appreciate my fellow Wildcats for all their various talents, all their gifts that they brought to the table during high school. And then it's been fascinating to see what they've done going forward. And I think your show has done a good job of bringing out people's gifts. So looking forward to seeing folks, I hope, at the reunion. I have my plane ticket. We'll see what happens with the pandemic in the fall, right? And but it will be special to go back to Bartlesville and reconnect.
Right. All right. Well, great. That's awesome. Dr. Jim Bond, James Bond. Remember, I used to say your name, and
you did. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to tell the James Bond Goes to Berlin story?
Sure.
Yeah. I even have a prop. Yeah. My passport.
This
right?
This is the time to
Yeah, I got to tell this story.
Yeah.
I told this in a message to Rhonda Rizzo Webb recently. She loved it. So I thought a verbal version. Okay, so it's 2008, spring of 2008. This is a true story. And I use this with my students because they love it. You know, it's a funny story. And a group of us, a group of faculty, were on a Lutheran Reformation tour in Germany. And so I'm going through security in Berlin, Scott, and I whip out my passport. I hand it to this guy, and I think he was Eastern European. And so he does this gooseneck thing. He looks down at my passport, and then he looks up at my face, and then he looks back down, you know, and then he says in his Eastern European accent, Mr. Bond, Mr. James Bond. And I was really in a good mood. It was literally my first time out of the country, and I'd never been overseas. And I looked at him and I shrugged my shoulders nonchalantly, like I was on a Western film set, and said, the other guy's just an actor. His eyes, Scott, got as big as saucers, and his right hand shot up in the air. He called over his colleague who trotted over. They were both wearing white shirts, you know, pens in the pocket, pocket protectors. He hands his colleague my passport. That guy does the same gooseneck routine. He can't believe it. Gives it back to the first guy. The first guy whips out a personal notebook from his shirt pocket, holds out the notebook to me, and says, autograph for my wife? Autograph for my wife? And I said, sure. Took it, signed my autograph, and he was so happy.
That's
because, yeah. And my buddy Cap Johnson, who professor of religion and business, he was also the football faculty advocate for football team. He was laughing his backside off during this whole thing. So I use that, especially with the freshmen when I meet them the first day. They love that story.
Yeah, it's a great icebreaker. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I have fun with it now when I can.
Yeah. Well, Jim, Dr. Jim Bond, thanks for joining us today. I'm glad we finally got connected here and made it happen. And,
thanks so much, Scott. Yeah.
Been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay.
So for Dr. Jim Bond, this is Scott Townsend. Thanks for watching and listening to the last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 podcast. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
The last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 podcast is a Dietzo Man production. Visit the last of the Col-Hi Wildcats 1982 YouTube channel, listen on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
This podcast is made possible by our Patreon members, Butch Boland, Ben Townsend, Mark Thompson, Glenn Goodrich, Sandra Yeager, and Christy Brooks. And by the generous donations made via the GoFundMe campaign.